Hi there, it's me, BrettFish. Welcome to another episode of Out of the Fishbowl. In a dark place as far as life, divorce, loneliness goes, in the middle of a world that has felt like it's imploding for the past 3 or 4 years, with not too many signs of righting itself, with COVID, with lockdown, with the conflict that's happening in Palestine, Israel, with various other forms of violence happening in many other countries, with the electricity and governmental leadership and educational and water crises happening in my own country, South Africa, it really has seemed bleak. And the question can often come down to, do I exist or can I live? And I spoke to this in an episode, Existential Crisis, back in season 1, but I feel like this deserves a second visit, because when you're looking at existing or surviving or just making it through, just getting by, versus this idea of living, thriving, adventuring, creating, being curious, I feel like there are three main choices. Number one, curl up in a ball and hope that everything magically changes while you just go through the motions. Number two, take a hedonistic approach, abandon all values and morals, put yourself center stage, screw everyone else except those you like or tolerate, and live for pleasure. Or number three, lean into significance and try to make some kind of difference where you are, where you can, with who you are, hopefully influencing others along the way. We're going to be looking at this idea of significance, being significant. And I think the word itself offers up a little bit of a roadblock, a little bit of a challenge, a little bit of a holding back, a taunting almost. This word is taunting us because we're told when you want to have purpose in life, when you want to have value, when you want to make a difference, and the idea is to be significant. Right there in the word it says significant, significant, significant. So do this, but you can't. Do this, but it won't work. This is the way things are. This is the way the world is. These are the systems and the structures that are there. You can't make a difference. You can't be significant. And so I want to challenge that idea, because I think we can. I think there is a difference to be made. I think there are world transformations. I think another world is possible. And so we're going to explore that in an episode I call Episode 7, Choose to be SignifiCAN. So one of the things that is most interesting to me is that when I sat down to plan this episode a while back, and when I started putting notes on paper, that was the introduction. That introduction described where I was, in a dark place as far as life, divorce, loneliness goes. And what's incredible and amazing to me now is that that is not a description of where I am. Following the hardest 3 years of my life, I was fortunate enough to go at the end of last year on a trip to Morocco and to London, and to see some of my favorite people that I really love and spend time with them and spend a decent amount of time out of South Africa. And when I came back, I was hoping, and it has proven to be the truth, that 2024 is going to be better. We've turned a corner. The light at the end of the tunnel is approaching, and it's not a train heading straight at me. And in terms of a number of things, the work that I do with Heartlines, in terms of going into communities and doing this Fathers Matter program, the idea of searching for the active, positive presence of men in the lives of children, and seeing lives shift and communities shift and momentum start to build, that is something that has given me a bit of purpose and a bit of life. The new church that I joined last year, Wellspring Community Church, the fact that I've joined a life group for the first time in 30 years, just a midweek small group of people that I really enjoy being with, and we challenge each other, and we encourage and inspire and pray for each other, and we eat good food together, and we wrestle with hard truths and with the way life is and with significance and all those kind of things, and a number of other things that have changed things, that have turned things around. And so that bleak beginning is not the situation where I am anymore, but I decided to keep it. Because I think a lot of people are still there, in that place. And some people may be more in a place that looks like where I am now. But the things we're going to talk about today, this idea of significance, is relevant to you no matter where you are in those spaces. And I think one of the things for me, the place where I am now, is because I believed in the things that I'm going to be talking about now. They work. They make a difference. They are meaningful. And so I want to encourage you. I want to invite you. Firstly, be curious. Listen. Think about how these things touch your life. Don't leave this time and just think, what a great talk, what a good message. Think about what can change in my life. What do I need to add? What do I need to cut out? How can I become more significant? And let's start with a couple of thoughts from people. J. Maxwell said, success is when I add value to myself. Significance is when I add value to others. Viktor Frankl said, life is never made unbearable by circumstances, but only by lack of meaning and purpose. And lastly, Fyodor Dostoevsky, the mystery of human existence lies not in just staying alive, but in finding something to live for. The mystery of human existence lies not in just staying alive, but in finding something to live for. And there are so many things. I'm going to touch on a few of them now, but speak to your friends, speak to your families, speak to your communities, your works, your faith communities, and spend time leaning into the kinds of things you can do. I'm going to throw out a few examples, and that's all this episode is going to be about. And I wanted to start at a place that is cheap or free. Start with the easy wins, with the low-hanging fruit, with things that are manageable, hopefully. And the first thing I put is be kinder. Like being kind. Like that's cheap, that's free, that's easy. Where are spaces in your life where you can just be a little bit kinder? Maybe it's at a traffic light, something that happens often in South Africa, where somebody comes up to your window with a sign begging for money, asking for food, with a child on their shoulders, trying to sell something. And there's a choice to turn away and ignore them and pretend they don't exist, or there's a choice to just be a little bit kinder, to look at them, to give them a smile, to wind down your window, to have a conversation, to hear their name, even if you're not giving them money or food or clothes or anything. And maybe at some time you will decide to do those things. But it's so easy just to be a little bit kinder, just to see the humanity in another person, to acknowledge it. I see you. I understand that things are really hard right now. I'm sorry. To walk with people. Something else we can do that is cheap, is free, is relatively easy, is stories. Major in listening, in spending time asking people around you to share some of their stories. Your neighbor over the wall, somebody that you walk by every day in the street, a colleague, the cleaner at the office, the person who makes you coffee, the person who cleans your home, the person who puts petrol in your car. Just take a moment. Sometimes we only have a moment to get a glimpse of a story. What does your name mean? Where were you born? Who's your family? What is something you've always wanted to do? What is something that brings you alive? Tell me about your children. If we start to major in listening, then we start to see connection. We start to see bridges. We start to see life. Again, we are humanizing. We are saying to people, I see you. You're important. You're significant. Your story matters. You matter. And that's how we start to become significance. That's how we start to become significance. That's how we start to lean into this thing of being SignifiCAN, to find significance. Volunteer. Most of us have some portion of time that we can offer to another person. Maybe some of us have a lot of time and we can join an organization and once a week do a thing. Maybe some of you only have one Saturday morning in a whole year where you can pitch up on a beach and clean up some stuff. You can go to an old age home and listen to some stories or tell some stories. You can invite a couple that you know are struggling around for a meal. That is not really volunteering. But you know what I mean. There are so many places that are just so hungry for volunteers, for people just to give a little bit of their time. And so find a space, instead of trying to volunteer at all the places and do all the things, find a space where you can be consistent. Once a month, every now and then. This is going to be an episode of contradictions, apparently. Be consistent every now and then. But find places where you're showing up. And maybe it's a thing about being kinder and about telling stories. Maybe that's the volunteering you do. Maybe you've got a skill. You can teach music to someone. You can help somebody with their maths homework. You can teach a language to somebody. And so by just regularly connecting with that person, finding a time that works for them, and you volunteer, change someone's life. Add value to someone's life. Add joy to someone's life. The next thing I was thinking about is, again, we're talking about cheap. We're talking about free. We're talking about simple. Smile. See people. Engage respectfully. If you're in a restaurant, how do you treat your waiter? If you're getting petrol, do you take a moment just to let that person know that you appreciate them, that you see them as a human? When you are pushing your groceries past the cashier, take some time to wish them a good day, to ask them how soon it is till they get to go off, to wish them a good weekend, good holiday. Engage respectfully. And then maybe a little bit of a harder one as we start to lean in a little bit more. Like if we're choosing to be significant, then hopefully we're going to be dedicated. Hopefully we are going to be prepared to do something that takes a bit more strain or sacrifice or requires a little bit more of us. And this one is about making right with people, apologizing. Most of us probably know somebody that we've hurt or disappointed or let down. And typically, most of us are not super excited about being the one to connect. If somebody wants to come and make right with us, then they need to do it. Or if there's a fight between two people, the other person must come and do. Make right with people. Go and apologize where you've done something wrong. Get over yourself. Find some humility. Often it's pride that keeps us from going to these things. And maybe some of these things are relationships that have been messed up for the longest time. And it feels like it's got to that point of time where, it's too late to apologize. Like I wish if I'd done it 2-3 years ago, maybe it would have been okay. But now it's too late. And I want to encourage you, if you have something like that is coming to mind right now, to message the person and see if they won't have a cup of coffee with you or a milkshake or a drink or a walk along the beach or whatever place of nature is closest to you. Reach out and say, hey, I don't like the way things are between us. I'd love to apologize. I'd love to just hear from you. I'd love to see if we can make this thing right again. Be the bigger person. Be the person who makes that step. I have had that with so many people where the thought of the thing or what's going to happen or how's this going to go is so overwhelming and so scary, and you get into the actual situation and it goes really well and you're able to repair friendship or fix up or start a new friendship, and you sit there afterwards and you go, why did I not do this sooner? What took me so long? Why was it so? And sometimes it does go badly and sometimes it doesn't go the way we want, but risking that for the sake of what might be if we take the opportunity of making right with someone we've wronged. I was listening to a thing on the radio this morning, and they were talking about people and inheritance and families that were fighting because the parents had died, and the one story struck me was that the grandparent had these semi-precious stones. And so when they died, it went to the parents. And then when the parents died, there were 3 children, and they fought over who got these precious stones. And then the guy finished it by saying there was a 10-year period where they didn't speak to each other for semi-precious stones. We're going to lose 10 years of relationship. We're going to lose 10 years of family because we're fighting over a thing that is a piece of rock, and yet we do that all the time. I've had my feelings hurt. I've had my pride injured. That person said that thing or they did that thing and they should have. Let's make right with people. Let's apologize. Let's at least invite the person to the thing and see if they aren't open to it and see what might happen, what might be restored, what significance is on offer when we take that step and make that first move. So those are a number of things that are cheap and free. Be kinder, tell stories, listen to stories, volunteer, smile, see people, engage respectfully, make right with people and apologize. And to those, I want to add this thing, add your money. Most of us feel like we don't have enough money, whether we're super rich or whether we have nothing. We tend to compare ourselves to people who have more, and we tend to think about the things that we don't have, and we think, I don't have enough money. But I want to encourage you, and the last 3 years have been a struggle for me. A lot of that was financial because of when the divorce went through and the difference in earning between myself and my wife. And so when she left, there was a lot less money and a lot of the same expenses. And so I was in a situation where it didn't feel like I had money and things were tight and I had to rely on sisters with dollars and things like that and friends. But even in those times, even when things were tight and even when I was relying on other people a lot of the time, one thing that I continued to do was to support the 2 or 3 things that I was supporting. A person, a friend of mine, a family doing amazing things, an organization, bottom up, that I speak about all the time, that are doing incredible work. And none of those were or are particularly big amounts of money, but by giving small amounts of money consistently, hopefully those are being added to other small amounts of money and maybe bigger amounts of money that other people are giving. So find something that you can donate money to. And I think a smaller amount of money on a regular basis is probably worth more than a big pile of money one time. But sometimes people, organizations, whatever, need a big pile of money at one time. But also generally there's running expenses, there's the ongoing things, and find something that you feel is significant and donate to that and inherit a part of the significance of what's happening because you're playing a part of it. Support. Maybe you know people that are doing incredible things. And maybe there's an official ask, because sometimes people ask people to support them, but maybe you can go to somebody. I had somebody recently stop the support they were giving for me. But the support they were giving for me, or giving to me, was meant to be for 3 years when we were in the States. And we came back from the States about 10 years ago, and this person decided to keep giving. And so they'd committed to 3 years. They decided, I'm going to keep going. And I told them to stop on a few occasions. And so for 10 years, they were just supporting because they believed in what I was doing. And they wanted to support that. And so it doesn't have to be an official thing. Maybe you know somebody that's doing incredible work. And maybe you can afford to give them 200 Rand a month, or 500 Rand a month, or 50 Rand a month, whatever it is. These things add up. Maybe it's a gift. Maybe it's entertaining, or inviting someone around for a dinner. Or you've got friends who have little kids, and you offer to babysit so that they can go out. Or maybe it's date night money. That was one of the biggest gifts we had from friends of ours when we were in the States. They sent us a little bit of money every month that was for date night, dedicated to date night. So we couldn't spend it on anything else. And so this invitation to once a month, just go and have fun, just go and do something cool. And there are lots of people that are maybe struggling in their relationships, and you just say, we want to support you in this way. Christmas is a good time. My parents modeled that amazingly. I've been fortunate enough for the last, I don't know how many years, to be involved in different ventures around Christmas, from making sandwiches with my mom and some friends, to Christmas under the bridge in town with some homeless people, to last year where a small group of us fed maybe 30, 50 homeless people in a church hall. Christmas, or even just regular dinner table time, is an amazing time where you can create significance by inviting people, maybe lonely people, maybe weird, crazy, strange people that nobody else wants to hang out with, maybe those on the fringes, maybe those going through stuff, people that you know are going to be alone, single people often. The world often feels like it revolves around married people, and single people are kind of left to their own devices. Find ways to add your money through donating, supporting, gifting, entertaining, or using the Christmas and the dinner table to start creating spaces of significance. And the hope with those things is always that people will dig it so much that they'll pay it forward. Like, this was an amazing experience, let me go do it for someone else. And I love when I hear those stories. The things we do don't have to be big, but they can inspire big things by encouraging other people to go do small things. As I've spoken about many times in this podcast, I am a follower of Jesus, or I try to be a follower of Jesus. And from a Jesus-following perspective, the economy of heaven is people. In terms of what I believe, there's a beautiful picture in one of the books in the New Testament where it talks about all the stuff we've acquired and all our accomplishments and achievements kind of all in a pile. And then this huge fire comes and just burns it all up. And for those who aren't Jesus followers, it's probably just linking this idea you can't take it with you. Because it doesn't matter how big your house is, or how big your car is, or what you've achieved, or what you've won. None of that stuff when you die gets to go with you. It all stays behind. What matters, the economy of heaven is people. What matters is the significance that you have been to other people around you. The way that you've made life better for people. The way that you've improved and created opportunities. The way you've made people feel. The way you've made life a little bit easier, or a little bit more enjoyable, or a little bit more meaningful. The economy of heaven is people. And so invest in people. And I think that's going to be the heart of this message, that the way you can be most significant is always going to involve other people. Going back to those quotes, success is when I add value to myself. Significance is when I add value to others. Another part of this, and this probably builds on ideas that I've already spoken about, but is this idea of community. And so that might mean your street, whether it's your neighbors, or if you have a kind of WhatsApp community group and you're connected to people. Maybe you're in a flat building and there's people on your floor, or people that you see every day. Maybe it's in your work with your colleagues. Maybe we're talking about family, extended family, maybe sports teams or whatever. But the ways that we can be significant are by looking for opportunities in those spaces. So I think of in my street, I live in a cul-de-sac, and for the longest time, everyone felt completely disconnected to each other. But then at some point, we got a WhatsApp group going. There's a lady who every day puts on the load shedding times. For those of us living in South Africa, there are certain times when electricity is gone. And I never have to think about it because it arrives in my WhatsApp every day. These are the times that you're not going to have electricity. This lady doesn't have to do it. She doesn't get paid for it. But it's just created such a beautiful bond of, like, everyone is super thankful when she does. she does it every day or when it changes or whatever. When people in our street go away, we let people know I'm away for 3 days, so people kind of keep an eye on the houses, or people are aware of comings and goings. People lend things to each other. I've borrowed lemons from people. I used to borrow a vacuum cleaner from people. I've driven neighbors to the hospital. I had a neighbor who allowed me to park a visitor's car behind the gate in their home. I've gone to help people sort out phones. Other people have come to borrow internet. Like, just the sense of, let's start to create a community, and that is more easy in some places than others. But how can we find significance? How can we be people of significance? What can we offer in those spaces? So maybe in your home, your neighborhood, but maybe it's at work. Maybe there's a way to offer something in a lunch break, or something, way to offer somebody in terms of carpooling. Like, we can get super creative on what it looks like. But how do we find significance among the people that we engage with or spend time with? What is a gap that we can keep our eyes open for? What is missing? What could be one of the most beautiful things I think ever, when somebody has a baby, and often when somebody goes into hospital, when friends come together and organize a dinner plan. And so everyone signs up, and you make one meal that you drop off with the family. And so somebody with a newborn child for the next 2 to 3 weeks of their life doesn't have to think once about making food. And you just really, really, really hope they like lasagna. Depending on where you are, you'll probably get different creative versions of what that food looks like. But I love that concept, because myself making a meal for someone else, that's usually something that I can do. For me to make 20 meals for someone else will break me. But if 20 of us are making one meal for someone, it's the most minor inconvenience for each of us, and it's the most incredible gift for the person on the receiving end. And the hope is that when it comes my turn, probably more likely to be in hospital than to have a baby, that people will rally around, and 20 meals will come my way. And I don't do it because I know that it's going to come back to me. But the hope is that we start to create communities where people really care for each other, where people really start to see each other. We have concern for each other. We support each other. We cheer each other on. And then another thought in terms of choosing to be SignifiCAN is this idea of living simply or living simpler. And that'll be different for each of us, because we all find ourselves on a scale of absolutely poor to absolutely wealthy. And most of us are probably a lot more wealthy than we think we are. And so what does it mean to live simply? Maybe it starts with living simpler. And so one thing that we did when I was married was we had 2 cars, which was super convenient. But we realized that we could get rid of one because of how our jobs worked and how our specific situation worked. And so it made things a little bit uncomfortable, and it made things a little inconvenient at times. But on the whole, it was really helpful. There was a time when we had a friend who didn't have a car, and so we would lend her our car once a week or once every 2 weeks or once a month, whatever it was, to go shopping. And so it was inconvenient because one of us had to drive and take her the car, and she had to drop us off, and then we had to do a whole big dance again when we fetched it. But it made life so much more significant for us and hopefully for her. Live simply, live simpler. This idea of, if you have something in your cupboard that you haven't touched for 5 years, I would go as far as saying 3 years or maybe even 2 years. Like, if you've got a pair of trousers you haven't worn for 5 years, there's a big likelihood you're never going to give them. You're never going to wear them again. Give them away. Sell them, pass them on, offer them to somebody who comes to your door and is looking for trousers, whatever it is. Like, find ways of cutting down things you don't need, and even getting a bit simpler maybe with things you do. Like, as we start to look around, what does it mean to live simpler? Like, do we need all the gadgets we have? Do we need to spend all the money we have on all the experiences we have? And maybe living simpler means cancelling your gym membership and organizing weekly walks on the beach or around your neighborhood. What I've found, what I've really loved the last 3-4 years is meeting with 2 different groups of friends on a Wednesday morning, on a Thursday morning, Muizenberg Beach. We go for a 2K, 3K walk. I'd love to be in the gym, but I just didn't have the money to be in the gym. And so part of living simpler was making a different choice. And that choice meant that I had increased connection with a mate of mine, which is really cool, or mates of mine. And so that's just another way we can think of being significant in a world that produces too much and has too much excess and all those kind of things. How do we live a little bit more simply? And will that enable us to be more generous? Will that enable us to be more kind? Will that enable us to be more inviting? How can we do things together? The idea of pooling cars, the idea of not having 20 people arriving somewhere in one car. And a lot of it is just about thinking a little bit, getting creative, all that kind of thing. And then the last thing, choose to be significant, is a much bigger one and is a whole episode by itself, but is something to just leave with you as you think about these things. And it's this idea of justice. Justice when it comes to education. Justice when it comes to protesting or awareness. How can we physically pitch up when there is injustice and people are meeting together to protest? We can physically show up and show our support, or we can use our social media spaces to create awareness of things. Sometimes we don't have the time to show up or the ability to show up, but we can at least share awareness. We can educate ourselves on things that matter. And so whether it's Gaza, Palestine, whether it's what's going on in the Congo, we can't know all of the things. We don't need to be on top of everything that's happening, but let's lean a bit into justice. What are the justice issues in our areas? In our school systems, in the inequality in South Africa and Cape Town between rich and poor, between black, white, colored, different people groups. Like, where will our voice be helpful? Is it being on a board for a year? Is it being involved on a committee or a group and actually getting skin in the game? Or is it just about helping with awareness or pitching up for protesting, listening to people? And then actual on-the-ground change. We can be agents of change. We've got a huge election coming up in South Africa, and that's always complicated for people. And what's been interesting for me is that this is the election where I know the most people that are standing up as ward councillors or as people representing parties in their districts. Like, I literally know people. Before there used to be names, faces on the TV, I know people. And those are people that are people who are saying, like, we want to get involved. Like, we've had enough of sitting on the sidelines. We want to practically get involved. And these are all the names and the faces that are coming to my mind right now. Really good people. People that I'd love to have on the inside, calling out things, holding government to account, being involved in programs in their spaces. People that I know will do significant things. And so sometimes it's actual on-the-ground change. And that can be politically, officially, or it can just be by doing some of the other things we've mentioned. Find out, research. What are the justice issues in your area, in your local school? Is there something that will benefit from you adding your voice, adding your name, adding a hand, adding a conversation to? And so let's go back to those three choices. Life can feel dark, it can feel hard, or it can feel good and amazing. We're all in different places. But the three choices we have are to curl up in a ball, hope everything magically changes while you go through the motions, or we can just focus on ourselves. Abandon the majority of values and morals and just put yourself center stage. Life is about being comfortable and happy and getting through it as painlessly as possible. Or we can lean into significance and try to make some kind of difference where you are, where you can, with who you are, hopefully influencing others along the way. And so if you hear my story of going from 3 of the darkest years of my life to a place where the sunrise is happening, where I'm stepping into goodness, where I'm feeling amazing, where amazing things are starting to happen to me and around me, and when I'm connected to things, it's because in those dark times, what did I say? Life, divorce, loneliness, all those kind of things. Like, in those times, I found ways to connect, to volunteer, to give, to donate, to be parts of things that were bigger than myself. And I found that by doing that, it pulled me out of myself. By focusing on other people, finding ways to volunteer in things that helped other people, it meant less time of looking at myself, sitting, feeling sorrowful, pitiful, all those kind of things. And slowly, as I was able to hopefully make a difference in the lives around me, I started to notice that things were happening in my own life. And it's not like it's a magical formula. Do things for other people and suddenly everything in your life comes right. But as we start doing things for other people, the negativity, the hardness, the horribleness, the pain, the frustration, the what if, the desolation, loneliness become less evident. And I think some of that stuff starts to rub off on us. The mystery of human existence lies not in just staying alive, but in finding something to live for. What do you live for? Is it people? And how does it manifest? How does it manifest? How do you show up? Don't just think this was amazing. Like, go and find ways, if you're not doing it already, to be significant, be kinder, get involved in stories, volunteer, smile, engage respectfully, fix broken relationships, add your money, connect with community, live simply. get involved with justice, and there must be 1,000 other things. But let's be people that believe that we can see communities change, we can see families change, we can see countries start to ripple effect, and maybe there is a world possible that works for everyone, or at least works for everyone a little bit more or a lot more than it does right now. Be the change you want to see in other people. Choose to be SignifiCAN. SignifiCAN. That's the way we will be significant. That's the way we will have lives that have meaning and make a difference to others.